This gun lights your firemen, the pilot lights out.
This football team is coming into our place. We're standing in our way.
This is a game of the heart. Focus and finish.
Shockwaves were felt throughout the fantasy football community late yesterday as the Patriots placed Shane Vereen on injured reserve with a designation to return after wrist surgery. The roster move means that he'll be out a minimum of 8 weeks. Now, Vereen was expected to catch plenty of passes out of the backfield this season and was even being used split out wide in some instances. He had 7 receptions for 58 yards in Week 1 against Buffalo, but it was his 14 rushes for 107 yards that opened fantasy owners' eyes. This is not only a blow for the Patriots in tomorrow night's matchup against the Jets, but it's a blow for Tom Brady longer term, as another one of his go-to targets has been taken away. Stevan Ridley and LeGarrett Blount will carry the load on the ground, but neither one of them has the ability to contribute in the passing game like Vereen did. New England re-signed tight end Matthew Mulligan yesterday to replace Vereen on the roster. Mulligan was on the Pats roster for 3 days early this month from September 3rd to the 5th before being waived, and he has no relevant fantasy value. Calvin Johnson missed much of training camp in 3 of the 4 exhibition games with what the Detroit Lions characterized as a simple knee bruise. He says he's 100%. Should we believe him? Well, let me read to you the list of wide receivers who had more fantasy points than Megatron in Week 1. Victor Cruz, Demaryius Thomas, A.J. Green, Anquan Bolden, Larry Fitzgerald, Leonard Hankerson, Jordy Nelson, Julian Edelman, Brian Hartline, Wes Welker, Brandon Marshall, Deshaun Jackson, Randall Cobb, Reggie Wayne, Vincent Jackson, Andre Johnson, Eddie Royal, Jerome Simpson, Marcus Colston, Marlon Brown, Steve Smith, Hakeem Nicks, Mike Williams, Julio Jones, Danny Amendola, Denarius Moore, Ruben Randall, Jermaine Kearse, Jericho Cotchery, Harry Douglas, Stevie Johnson, Andre Roberts, Torrey Smith, Doug Baldwin, Andre Caldwell, Michael Floyd, Kenny Stills, Nate Burleson, Miles Austin, Donnie Avery, Brandon Gibson, Antonio Brown, Vincent Brown, Rod Streeter, Robert Woods, Pierre Garçon, Junior Hemingway, no relation to Ernest, DeAndre Hopkins, Santana Moss, Josh Morgan, Golden Tate, Emmanuel Sanders, Malcolm Floyd, Devon Bess, Dexter McCluster, Jeremy Curley, Cecil Shorts, Alshon Jeffrey, Travis Benjamin, Tavon Austin, and Kembrell Tompkins. Now, if you have him, no doubt you took him as the first wide receiver off the board. In some drafts, he went in round 1. Now, Week 1's performance certainly didn't validate that, but I wouldn't get too bent out of shape. It's really not quite as bad as the stats bore out. Johnson had 4 catches for 37 yards, but he was targeted 9 times and did have a 20-yard TD reversed by replay. I wouldn't be quaking in my boots if you're heavily dependent on him just yet, but it's not going to get much easier this week. While tight end Jared Cook did catch 7 passes for 141 yards and 2 TDs against Detroit's Week 2 opponent Arizona, the Cardinals held the Rams wide receivers to just 10 fantasy points in Week 1. That was 3rd fewest in the league. So who had the Chiefs' defense in Week 1? 23 points to lead the pack, not too shabby. Were they a great defense? No, I don't think so. But they played the team with the worst offense in the game, Jacksonville. It's the Raiders who play the Jaguars this week, which means your defense needs to be dressed in silver and black. At Gimme Money wants to know if James Jones should be jettisoned after being shut out in Week 1. Hey, look, he may not rack up 14 touchdowns like he did last season, but he'll end up being a solid wide receiver 3. I wouldn't be throwing him to the wolves just yet. I found a hard time finding many people to say anything good about Leonard Hankerson before the season started. I wouldn't necessarily expect 2 TDs every week, but 5 catches for 80 yards will be just dandy in PPR leagues, especially for a wide receiver 3. And I think that's just about what you're going to get. If you have a question you want answered here on the show, hit me up with a tweet. I use one each day, and for the rest of you, I'll get back to you with my best advice. And be sure to tune in to the Roto Experts Fantasy Football News Notes and Analysis segment every weekday. I'll be here to keep you current and ahead of the competition, and on weekends, come back for This Week in Fantasy Football as I team up with the King, Scott Engel, covering the week that was and the week that will be, answering your viewer questions. For Roto Experts, I'm Mike Cardano. See you tomorrow.